In the week and a half since General Martin Dempsey's intervention, the conditions which would lead to a thermonuclear confrontation amongst Russia, China, and the United States have become more intense. There are a series of military exercises among Russia, the United States, and Israel, which, while having been planned in advance, are being conducted in a moment in history which is anything but routine. The situation in both Syria and Iran is continuing to be driven to disintegration by the transatlantic establishment, even while that transatlantic system is itself disintegrating under the weight of its own policy of austerity, bailout, and hyperinflation. At a press conference last week in China with Chinese Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi and Secretary of State Clinton, when the topic turned to Syria, Foreign Minister Yang said that the events there would prove that the United States, not China, were on the wrong side of history.
We are all member states of the United Nations. We believe that on the question of Syria, the purposes and principles of the UN Charter should be upheld and implemented, especially the principle of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs.
我想强调，中国不偏袒任何一个人或者任何一方在这个问题。
And on the question of Syria, let me emphasize that China is not partial to any individual or any party.
我想历史会证明，中国所采取的立场说明，中国是需要问题妥善处理和解决的促进者。
I think history will judge that China's position on the Syrian question is a promotion of the appropriate handling and resolution of the Syrian issue.
因为在我们心中想的就是叙利亚人民的利益，本地区人民的利益和地区世界的和平稳定发展。
For what we have in mind is the interests of the people in Syria and the region, and the interests of peace, stability, and development in the region and around the world.
And as was indicated by the first two questions from among the International Press Corps, the Chinese and everyone else are fully aware that the policy of the Obama administration amounts to a strategic military encirclement of China. The Russians also see clearly their own encirclement by the Obama administration. In January, we reported that the Russian General Staff were planning a set of exercises based on a possible U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. At the time, the Nezavisamaya Gazeta reported that these exercises, called Caucasus 2012, will differ from last year's exercises in this series by being larger scale and more closely approximating the actual current military and political conditions, including the scenario of a possible war by the USA and several other countries against Iran, as well as other possible conflicts in the Caspian and Southern Caucasus region. They added that this year the exercises will not be merely tactical operational, but strategic in nature. It is important to recognize that the language strategic, in relation to military operations, means operations which include the thermonuclear arsenal. The Russian Strategic Missile Corps and the Aerospace Defense Forces, the divisions which would actually engage the United States in a thermonuclear confrontation, were slated to participate in these exercises. The Caucasus 2012 maneuvers are scheduled to begin September 17th to run for 6 days. On September 7th, the Russian Ministry of Defense concluded their command staff exercises of the Strategic Missile Forces, which included over 8,000 servicemen, 150 command points, and 300 individual weapons and related equipment. On the eve of commencing these exercises, the head of that division spoke to RIA Novosti about the development of a new intercontinental ballistic missile. It is necessary to note the new missile's ability to be invulnerable before launch, thanks to their mobility, as well as their ability to tackle the task of defeating any possible missile defense system within the next 15 to 20 years, should such a need arise. Russia Today, which published the first interview with re-elected President Vladimir Putin since his inauguration, notes that Russia is preparing an asymmetrical response by developing weapons capable of breaching the system. This new ICBM is to be deployed by no later than 2018. These developments are a rational response to and consequence of our toleration of Obama commanding the presidency of the United States. The United States and Israeli missile defense exercise is scheduled for October, and though it has been dramatically reduced in scope as compared to the original plan of 5,000 troops and related systems down to some 1,200, it's still substantial. Also take note that the Israeli Home Front Command will be conducting a disaster response exercise at precisely the same time that these missile defense maneuvers are to take place. Again, for emphasis, though these exercises were scheduled some time ago, the situation in which they are being conducted is anything but routine. In fact, one of the reasons the bombing of Hiroshima was so devastating to human life was this factor of routine. When the Japanese Air Defense Corps saw only a single unaccompanied plane that morning, they assumed it was the flight of a U.S. weather plane which routinely flew overhead that time of day. They sounded the all clear.
При неблагоприятном развитии ситуации
On November 23rd of last year, then President of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, made it very clear that the implementation of the anti-ballistic missile shield in Europe under the auspices of NATO, and without any legally binding agreements that that system is not targeting Russia, represents a threat to Russia of a strategic nature, and he made public the orders he had executed for a military deployment with the capability to destroy parts of that system. He made it equally clear that Russia was leaving the channel open for a diplomatic solution.
Тем не менее, еще раз хотел бы подчеркнуть, мы не закрываем дверь ни для продолжения диалога с Соединенными Штатами и Североатлантическим альянсом по вопросам противоракетной обороны, ни для практического сотрудничества в данной сфере. Мы к этому готовы. Однако путь к такой работе лежит через создание четкой правовой базы нашего взаимодействия. Такой базы, которая обеспечит учет наших законных интересов. Мы открыты к диалогу и рассчитываем на разумный и конструктивный подход со стороны наших западных партнеров.
Since that presidential address, Russia has maintained this stance, while we in the United States have not sought to resolve the problem through dialogue and diplomacy, but the exact opposite. Under Barack Obama's administration, the policy has been an encirclement of Russia and China both. Current President Vladimir Putin had the following to say in his exclusive interview with Russia Today, conducted on September the 3rd.
We did what we could. We said, let's do it together. Our partners are so far refusing to go along, but what else can we do? We can maintain dialogue. That's exactly what we will be doing. But naturally, as our American partners proceed with developing their own missile defense, we shall have to think how we can defend ourselves and preserve the strategic balance. By the way, America's European allies, who also happen to be Russia's partners, have nothing to do with it. I believe that as a European national, you should understand it. This is a purely American missile defense system, and a strategic one at that, with its European elements pushed to the periphery. You see, Europe, just like Russia, is not allowed to take part in either assessing missile threats or controlling the system. Our original proposal was to develop it as a three-party solution, but our partners have not agreed to that.
Okay, so
President Putin addressed the prospect of an election of Romney to the U.S. presidency and the effect of party politics and election rhetoric on the world stage.
the man that, if he makes it to the White House, said Russia is without question our #1 geopolitical foe. They fight every cause for the world's worst actors. He went on to say Russia is not a friendly character on the world stage. Could you work with him, sir?
Yes, we can. We'll work with whichever president is elected by the American people. But our effort will only be as efficient as our partners allow it to be. As for Mr. Romney's position, we understand that this is to a certain extent motivated by election campaign rhetoric. But I also think that he was obviously wrong, because such behavior in the international arena is the same as using nationalism and segregation as tools of US domestic policy. Its effect in the international arena is the same. When a politician, a person who aspires to lead a nation, especially a great country like the US, declares someone to be enemy a priori. And by the way, this brings something else to mind. When we talk about the missile defense system, our American partners keep telling us This is not directed against you. But what happens if Mr. Romney, who believes us to be America's #1 foe, is elected as President of the United States? In that case, the missile defense system will definitely be directed against Russia, as it is technologically configured exactly for this purpose. And you also have to think about its strategic character. It's built not for a year or even a decade, and the chances that a man with Romney's views could come to power are quite high. So what are we supposed to do to ensure our security?
The surest way in the short term to avoid the threat of thermonuclear war of extinction is to remove Obama now, before the elections. An immediate thing to do is to call your congressman and demand that they sign on to Walter Jones's HCR 107 and to bring it up for a vote. The Congress is in session right now, and we have a team in D.C. organizing on the Hill. Call your representative, your senator, and tell them to meet with us on this. History does not wait for an election. Barack Obama has to go, no matter what. The deeper problem, however, is how we let an Obama come to office in the first place, and why we tolerate a candidate to run against him who, as of now, lacks the qualities to win outright, who, as it stands, can't even beat the worst president the United States has ever suffered, without question. Why we tolerate a race to the bottom. Why we continue to offer up for election to the office of the presidency of the United States, the most important job in the only nation which was established distinctly in defiance of empire. Why we offer up a geopolitical and physical economic nightmare to lead us time and time again. Party politics have run their course. They have brought us to ruin, and either we will find the guts to break with party politics and do what is necessary for the nation as a whole, or we are going to destroy ourselves in the name of party unity. As we detail in the LaRouche platform for a full recovery of the United States, the alternative to party politics, which have brought us to the doorstep of a thermonuclear war of extinction, is clear. We can revive the nation, but we must do so as a nation, undivided by petty party politics. The representatives are elected to represent the people, all the people of their districts, with the nation in view, the senators, the entirety of their state, and the president, the nation as a whole. All swear an oath not to party unity, not to an individual, but to the Constitution of the United States. In this time of crisis, we will return to the principles and purposes of self-government in that great Constitution, or we will perish from the earth.